Maximilian von Habsburg, Germany's richest heir, had everything. Money, power, a model girlfriend who seemed perfect. But he had doubts about one fundamental thing. Was Claudia's love real or just self-serving? So he devised an extreme plan that would shock everyone. With the help of his family doctor, he faked a terrible accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. He wanted to see how Claudia would react when she saw him in a wheelchair, dependent on the care of others, no longer possessing the attraction of power. But what happened in the days that followed left him frozen. While Claudia showed her true colors, someone else in the villa, a person he had always considered invisible, demonstrated such pure and selfless love that his outlook on life changed forever. Who was this mysterious person who truly loved him for who he was? And how would she react when she discovered that it had all been an act? Maximilian von Habsburg sat in his panoramic office on the 50th floor of the tower that bore his name, in the heart of Munich, and looked out over the city that spread out below him like an empire of which he was the undisputed ruler. At the age of 30, he had inherited the Habsburg family's financial empire and tripled it in just 5 years, becoming the third richest man in Europe. He owned everything money could buy. A castle worth 50 million euros on Lake Starnberg, a collection of sports cars, yachts, private jets, houses in every capital city in the world. And above all, he had Claudia Muller, Germany's most photographed model, to whom he had been engaged for 2 years and whom all the newspapers described as the most beautiful and enviable couple in the country. Yet on this September evening, Maximilian felt empty. One thought had been tormenting him for months. Did Claudia really love him? Or was she just attracted to his wealth and power? The signs were subtle but clear. The way she lit up when he gave her expensive jewelry, but became distant during deeper conversations. The way she disappeared when he had difficult days at work, only to reappear at social events. The fact that she was never interested in his thoughts, doubts, or fears, or so. Maximilian had observed all this with the same analytical acuity he applied to business, and the conclusion was bitter. He was in love with a woman who saw him only as a luxury ATM. That evening, a crazy idea began to form in his mind. If Claudia really loved him, she would still love him even if he were no longer the powerful Maximilian von Habsburg, whom the whole world admired. He called Dr. Marcus Weber, his family doctor and one of the few friends he had. When Weber arrived at his office an hour later, Maximilian explained to him the most extreme plan of his life, to pretend to be paralyzed in order to test Claudia's love. The doctor was speechless, convinced he had misheard, but when he saw the determination mixed with vulnerability in the eyes of his childhood friend, he began to consider the proposal seriously. Maximilian explained that he wanted to see how Claudia would react when she saw him in a wheelchair, dependent on the care of others, no longer possessing the appeal of success. Technically, it was feasible. Weber could forge some reports saying that a car accident had caused damage to the spinal cord with hope for recovery. That night, Maximilian did not sleep, watching Claudia rest peacefully, unaware of what was about to happen. The next day, everything was organized down to the smallest detail. Weber prepared fake medical documents, briefed trusting nurses, and even had credible medical equipment installed in the villa. Maximilian called Claudia, who was in Berlin for a photo shoot, and invented the details of a terrible accident that had left him paralyzed. Claudia's reaction was what he expected: shock, disbelief, promises to return to Munich immediately. But Maximilian, with the trained ear of a man accustomed to reading people in business, noticed a pause that was too long before the words of comfort, a hesitation that made his blood run cold. When Claudia arrived at the villa that evening, Maximilian was already on stage with his deception, sitting in a wheelchair and waiting for the moment of truth. The sound of the Porsche on the gravel driveway made his heart beat faster than during any billion-dollar negotiation. And as he heard the footsteps approaching, he did not yet know that the real surprise would not come from Claudia, but from someone else who lived under his roof and whom he had always considered practically invisible. Claudia entered the villa like a star on a red carpet, despite the dramatic circumstances. Her Louboutin heels clicked on the marble as she made her way to Maximilian in his wheelchair. She wore a perfectly fitting red Armani suit, her hair perfectly styled despite the urgent journey. Her makeup was flawless. A truly concerned woman would not have prepared herself as if for a photo shoot. She threw herself theatrically at his feet, but Maximilian noticed that she was careful not to ruin her dress. When he explained that the doctors were talking about months or years of healing, with the possibility that he might never fully recover, he saw a shadow pass over Claudia's eyes, a flash of disappointment so quick that it was almost imperceptible. Claudia's words sounded hollow, spoken automatically. She avoided looking him in the eye. Her gaze wandered around the room as if she were already thinking about something else. When Maximilian mentioned that he would need months of care, Claudia hastened to say that she would help him, but immediately began listing her already planned work commitments. Less than 24 hours after learning of the accident, she was already listing the reasons why she couldn't stay by his side. The contract with Hugo Boss, the Mercedes campaign in Switzerland, the fashion show in Paris. While Claudia was speaking, Maximilian heard the discreet sound of someone in the next room. It was Anna Hoffman, the Austrian housekeeper who had been working in the villa for 3 years. A woman of about 40, always quiet and efficient, who went unnoticed. Medium height, brown hair, always neatly pinned up, simple and practical clothes. Anna entered with a tea tray, and Maximilian really looked at her for the first time in years. There was genuine concern in her dark eyes, which contrasted sharply with Claudia's attitude. She arranged a pillow behind his back with caring and natural gestures. Claudia watched the scene with obvious impatience and excused herself to make urgent calls to her agent. She left the room, leaving behind only a trail of expensive perfume and a feeling of emptiness. Anna stayed and quietly tidied up the room. Maximilian asked her to stay, admitting that he needed company. For the first time in 3 years, they spoke to each other as human beings rather than employer and employee. Anna sat down next to him naturally and listened as Maximilian complained about feeling miserable. She replied that she didn't think anything of the sort, that he was going through a very difficult time and needed people who truly loved him. These words touched Maximilian more than any declaration of love from Claudia. There was a sincerity in Anna that he had never noticed before, an ability to see beyond the surface that touched him deeply. The following night, Claudia slept in the guest room so as not to disturb him. Maximilian stayed awake, thinking about how his plan was already showing unexpected results. Claudia had shown her true colors in less than hours: superficial, interested, incapable of true affection when the going got tough. But the real revelation had been Anna. In a few hours of feigned disability, this quiet woman had shown more care and humanity than Claudia had ever shown. The next day, Claudia left for Paris as planned, unable to hide her relief at being able to escape the uncomfortable situation. Maximilian watched her get into the Porsche, and for the first time in 2 years, he felt no pain at seeing her go. What he didn't know was that Anna was watching the same scene from the kitchen window with an expression of sadness and indignation that would have surprised anyone who had noticed. The days following Claudia's departure reveal a reality to Maximilian that he had never noticed before. While Claudia sent sporadic messages with excuses to prolong her absence, Anna became his constant, quiet but indispensable presence. Every morning at 7 o'clock, Anna entered with breakfast, just the way he liked it. Scrambled eggs, double espresso, warm croissants, fresh orange juice. But it was the way she did it that impressed him. Her natural gestures, without any air of sacrifice or duty. Anna had rough hands from work, but her movements were incredibly gentle. She helped him without making him feel inadequate, talked to him without pity, still treated him as a whole person, despite his apparent condition. One day, Maximilian asked her why she had come to Germany. Anna hesitated, then told him that her younger sister had needed a very expensive heart operation. In Austria, the waiting lists were too long, so she came to Germany, where you could earn more as a housekeeper. The operation had been successful 2 years ago, and now Katerina was studying medicine in Vienna to become a heart surgeon. Maximilian felt something tighten in his chest. This woman had sacrificed everything to save her sister, leaving her homeland, her family, caring for a strange rich man, and he had never noticed. In the days that followed, Maximilian began to notice things about Anna that had always been there: how she sang quiet Austrian songs while cleaning, how she read literature during her breaks, how she spoke 3 languages perfectly and had a degree in literature that she had never mentioned. On the 5th day, when Maximilian pretended to have back pain, Anna did not hesitate. She would sleep in the armchair in his room to look after him. That night, she never really slept, getting up every hour to check if he was okay, covering him up, bringing him water without him asking. Around 4 a.m., believing he was fast asleep, Anna approached him and with infinite tenderness, tidied a strand of hair that had fallen across his forehead. Then she whispered so softly that he could barely hear her. "Please get well soon. I can't bear to see you like this." There was such genuine pain, such pure affection in that sentence that Maximilian had to grit his teeth to keep from reacting. Anna didn't love his money, didn't love his status, but loved him, Maximilian, even though he was broken and dependent. The next morning, when Anna brought him breakfast with her usual friendly smile, Maximilian saw her with completely new eyes. This woman had spent 3 years caring for him with a devotion that went beyond professional duty. When Maximilian asked her what she would do if he never fully recovered, Anna looked him straight in the eye with surprising intensity. She told him that he was already perfect as he was, that disability did not define a person, that he was still Maximilian von Habsburg, intelligent, friendly, capable of making people laugh, generous. His legs had nothing to do with who he really was. And when Maximilian asked if he would need care forever, Anna replied without hesitation, "Then I will be there forever." At that moment, Maximilian understood that he had found something he didn't even know he was looking for. Not just true love, but a person who saw him for who he really was and loved him for exactly that. But what he didn't know was that Anna had begun to suspect something, and that the truth, if it came out, would have consequences that neither of them could imagine. Anna Hoffman was not stupid. She had a degree in literature, spoke 4 languages, and above all, she had the female instinct that helped her notice details that others overlooked. And some details about Maximilian's accident didn't convince her. First, Maximilian was too fit for someone who had suffered a severe spinal cord injury. His leg muscles showed no signs of atrophy. Second, his reflexes were perfect. When cleaning, Maximilian instinctively pulled his feet back when there was a risk of injury. Third, she had seen him move his toes in his sleep. But the detail that made her most suspicious was, do you like this story? Give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue with the video. It was finding medical documents that happened to be lying on his desk while she was cleaning his office. Anna had cared for her sister during her illness and knew medical terminology. These files were too general, as if they had been written by someone who was not specialized in spinal cord trauma. On the evening of the 7th, Anna made a decision. She waited until Maximilian fell asleep. Then she went down to his office. She knew the combination of the safe behind the Leonardo painting, his mother's date of birth. What she found left her breathless. There was a contract with Dr. Weber for unconventional medical consulting services. Emails between Maximilian and the doctor that spoke of convincing staging and behavioral testing. Receipts for the rental of the wheelchair and the fake medical equipment. Anna sat down in the armchair, trembling, the documents in her hands, and felt her world collapse. Everything was fake. The accident, the paralysis, her suffering at seeing him like that. Maximilian had orchestrated everything to test Claudia. She had been nothing more than collateral damage, an involuntary witness to a cruel experiment. The most humiliating thing was that she had fallen in love with him during that week of fake care. She had spent sleepless nights full of worry, praying for his recovery, dreaming of an impossible future. Tears flowed silently as she read the last document, a plan on how to gradually reveal the truth to minimize damage to relationships. Maximilian had planned how he would manipulate her even after the deception. Anna put everything back in its place, went to her room and packed her suitcases. She left a formal letter of resignation on the kitchen desk, gathered her belongings, and called a taxi. It was 3 a.m. when she left the villa for the last time and quietly closed the door. But Maximilian was not asleep. Guilt and the growing awareness of his feelings for Anna kept him awake. He heard the taxi drive away and ran to the window just in time to see the lights disappear into the darkness. He found the empty room and the letter in the kitchen, a few formal lines of resignation that broke his heart. At 8 a.m., he called Dr. Weber in a panic. Anna had discovered everything and left. He had to find her. Weber told him that maybe it was better this way, that the plan had gone too far. But Maximilian shouted that it was no longer about Claudia. He had fallen in love with Anna. This woman had loved him when she thought he was paralyzed, cared for him as if he were the most important person in the world, and he had rewarded her with the cruelest lie. Finding Anna Hoffman in a city of 2 million people without any contacts proved more difficult than any financial operation Maximilian had ever undertaken. And as the days passed without any news from her, he realized that he had lost the most precious thing he had ever possessed, just as he realized that he could not live without her. Maximilian discovered that being one of the richest men in Germany meant nothing when what you were looking for was a person who had every reason in the world to hide from you. Anna had disappeared from Munich as if she had never existed, and every day without finding her was torture. He immediately gave up the paralysis phase and returned to walking normally. But ironically, he felt more paralyzed than before. Paralyzed by regret, by the fear of having lost the woman he loved forever. He hired 3 private detectives, placed ads in newspapers, checked all the cheap hotels in the city. But Anna seemed to have vanished into thin air. The only thing he found out was that she had withdrawn all her savings. $1,000 that she had saved in 3 years. On the 5th day, he received a phone call that made him freeze. Claudia had returned from Paris, surprised to see him walking normally. Maximilian had completely forgotten about Claudia. The woman for whom he had orchestrated the staging now seemed insignificant to him. When Claudia enthusiastically suggested going to Monte Carlo as planned, without even asking how the week of paralysis had been, Maximilian finally realized her superficiality. He ended the relationship immediately. That evening, completely alone in his villa, he had an idea. If he couldn't find Anna directly, perhaps he could find her through her sister Katharina, who was studying medicine in Vienna. He used his influence to obtain information from Austrian universities. After 2 days of research, he found Katharina Hoffmann, 25 years old, a 5th-year student at the Medical University of Vienna, specializing in pediatric heart surgery. Without hesitation, he took his private jet to Vienna. He found Katharina in the university library, bent over books on heart anatomy. The resemblance to Anna was obvious. The same dark eyes, the same delicate features. When he introduced himself as Anna's former employer, Katharina's expression turned cold and suspicious. She told him that Anna was not angry with him, but devastated. She had cried for 3 days when she arrived in Vienna. She had found out everything he had done, how he had deceived her and used her for his cruel games. Maximilian begged to know where Anna was and said he loved her. Katharina laughed bitterly. That was his way of loving her, making her fall in love with him while pretending to be paralyzed, playing with her feelings to test another woman. Maximilian sat down heavily, crushed by the weight of his guilt. Katharina observed the sincerity of his pain. Then she told him that if he really loved Anna, he should leave her alone. Anna deserved someone who didn't lie to her, who didn't manipulate her, who treated her with respect from the start. Maximilian admitted that she was right, that Anna deserved much better than him. He only asked to tell her that he was more sorry than words could express, and that he would give anything for the chance to undo what he had done, if there was a way. Maximilian returned to Munich with a heavy heart. Perhaps the most loving thing he could do was to leave Anna alone, to allow her to rebuild her life away from the pain he had caused her. But what Maximilian didn't know was that Anna had heard every word of the message Katharina had delivered to her in her little Viennese boarding house, and that those words had rekindled something in her that she thought she had buried forever. 2 weeks after Maximilian's return from Vienna, life in the villa on Lake Starnberg had become an emotional desert. Maximilian worked mechanically, ate hardly anything, slept little. He had dismissed the entire staff and lived alone in this huge house, which now seemed to him like a golden tomb. Every room reminded him of Anna: the kitchen, where she had lovingly prepared meals, the living room where they had had their first real conversations, his room where she had watched over him with infinite devotion while he shamelessly lied about his health. One gray November morning, the doorbell rang. Maximilian found a courier with an express package from Austria. The sender was Katharina Hoffmann, Vienna. Inside was a letter and a small object wrapped in tissue paper. The letter was handwritten. Anna was sending him something that belonged to him and had something to tell him, but only if he had truly changed. If he was interested, Anna would be in the park of Neuschwanstein Castle the next day at 1 p.m., the place where they had first met. Maximilian unwrapped the object, and his heart stopped. It was the small silver crucifix his mother had given him when he was 16. the only piece of jewelry of sentimental value he owned. He must have lost it during the week of his fake paralysis, and Anna had found it. But Anna said she had been in the park at Neuschwanstein Castle when they first met. Maximilian didn't remember meeting her there before work. The next day, he arrived at Neuschwanstein an hour early, too nervous to wait at home. At 3 p.m., he saw her arrive. She was wearing a simple coat, her hair down for the first time since he had known her, and she looked thinner. They stood at a distance and studied each other. Anna smiled sadly and began to tell her story. It had been 3 years ago. She had just arrived from Austria, did not yet speak German well, and was looking for work. She had seen the ad for a housekeeper in his villa, but was afraid. She sat on this bench and cried because she didn't know if she would ever be good enough. Maximilian had passed by during his morning run. He had stopped and asked if everything was all right. She had told him that she was Austrian, looking for work, afraid. He had given her a handkerchief and told her that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite the fear. Then he had asked if he should accompany her to the interview and said that he would put in a good word for her with his boss. He didn't know that he was the future boss. Maximilian began to remember the Austrian girl crying in the park, his impulse to help her. Anna explained that she had fallen in love with him that day, with the friendly man who had stopped to help a stranger. But when she started working for him, she saw that he had changed. Cold, distant, focused only on money and success. She thought she had been wrong about him. During the week of feigned paralysis, she had seen the man she had fallen in love with 3 years ago again. Vulnerable, human, capable of real conversation. That's why it hurt even more to discover that it was all a lie. Maximilian got up from the bench and knelt in front of her on the damp grass. He solemnly promised her that he would never lie to her again, that he would treat her like the queen she was, that he would love and respect her every day of his life. If she gave him a chance, he would spend the rest of his days proving to her that she deserved all the love in the world. Anna saw him kneeling before her, this powerful man humbling himself out of love for her, and felt the wall of pain and mistrust begin to crumble. She told him to get up, that people would be watching. He replied that he didn't care what people thought. All that mattered to him was what she thought. She reached out her hand to help him up. When they touched, they both felt the electric spark that had always been there. Anna gave him one chance. Just one. The first lie would be the end of it forever. Maximilian took her hands and looked into her eyes with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. One chance was all he asked for, and he would use it to prove to her that true love existed and that she deserved it more than anyone else in the world. They kissed in the park of Neuschwanstein Castle, the place where they had first met, while the November sun bathed everything around them in golden light. For the first time in his life, Maximilian understood that true wealth is not measured in money or possessions, but in the ability to love and be authentically loved. 2 years later, Anna and Maximilian were married in the same park in front of 200 guests, including Katharina, now an established heart surgeon, and all the employees of the villa, whom Anna had insisted on inviting. The Austrian housekeeper had become Mrs. von Habsburg, but had retained her simplicity and friendliness. Maximilian had learned to be the man Anna had seen in him from the very first day, generous, humane, capable of loving unconditionally. And every time they passed the bench at Neuschwanstein during their Sunday walks, they stopped to thank fate for making their love possible. A love that was born of kindness, grew in truth, and blossomed in the second chance that everyone deserves when love is authentic. Like if you believe that true love sees beyond appearances. Comment on which moment in the story touched you the most. Share to inspire those who believe in second chances. Subscribe for more stories about authentic love and redemption. Sometimes it takes a lie to discover the truth. Sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters. And sometimes the greatest love is not the one we seek, but the one that finds us when we least expect it. Because true love doesn't look at the bank account, but at the account of the heart.